ask that you keep the responses to a minute, just to kind of get quick bites or compare and contrast. So with that, we've taken the questions that people submitted. Apologies in advance, there are a lot of questions here, so we may not get to all of them. But we'll take them in the order of most controversial first. So with that, let's start with, and again, please keep your responses to a minute. Okay, so with that, are you a Cubs fan or a White Sox fan?
I'm a city clerk of Chicago.
Virginia. I'm the city clerk of Chicago. I represent all citywide teams, and so I'm a fan of everyone, especially Chicago Sky.
For me, I'm a South Sider. I'm a White Sox fan.
I love basketball, so I'm a Bulls fan, as I told you earlier, and I love the Chicago Sky. I'm a season ticket holder.
And Mr. Julius on Zoom?
I think it was a question. I did grow up on the north side. I'm a huge Cubs fan. I was fortunate to bring my daughter to the Sky game, and like Alderman Dowell, huge hoops fan, and I am a diehard Bulls fan, and I know she's been a great supporter of the Bulls, and that's like my sport, and that's my team forever, no matter what.
All right, very good. Okay, so moving along. So on a more serious note, the Secretary of State handles business registrations, and many in the community and many of the people here are first-generation immigrants who aren't necessarily familiar with the system. English isn't their first language. What steps will you take to simplify the process for these business owners and entrepreneurs? Let's go ahead and start with you.
As I mentioned before, the first step would be to make sure that there's language access. So all the materials would be printed in the language of what people speak. So I would do that first. The second thing I would do would be to hold seminars and workshops to bring people into the process of understanding how you deal with government, how you fill out an application, to even assist them with the information that they need to provide to the Secretary of State. I think sometimes you have to show people how to do something, so they get it right the first time, and then the second time it's a lot easier. So that would be the main two things: language access and services within the communities at people's fingertips in small settings.
Thank you so much. As I told you, I have a background in accounting and operations management. One of the things I've learned in accounting is before you take on anything, you go in and you do an audit. And so I would go out to the business community and find out what the concerns are and what their needs are, and then make sure that we are applying those and bringing those to the businesses. What's critical to me, I told you all that the Secretary of State office is also the state librarian. We can use our offices to bring services like business services, or even the quick things like renewing driver's licenses to the community through the libraries. And so we can use those libraries as satellite offices and bring those services there closer to the people. So not only are you having literature with languages that help those different communities, but also the people there that's helping them. And so that's what I would do as Secretary of State.
Okay. Ms. Valenti?
Yes, I feel like there's a missed opportunity for like a quick technology fix. When you register your business, you should automatically have your zip code, automatically put you in touch with the local chamber of commerce, with the business center, with the Department of Economic Development, so that they can look at other business grants out there that you could apply for. So I think we miss that opportunity when people are registering, so I think that's important. Obviously, language access, ADA access, is super important, that we need to make sure our technology has that available. And again, like our mobile city halls that we've been doing in Chicago, in 2019 and again this year, I think it's very important to have folks there and meet people where they are, Saturday hours, evening hours, and helping them register businesses. But really connecting them with their neighborhood, cohort, or chamber is super important.
And then Mr. Gianluis?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I couldn't hear the initial question.
Sure. The Secretary of State handles business registrations. Many in the community are first-generation immigrants who aren't familiar with the system. English isn't the first language, so on and so forth. What steps will you take to simplify the process for these entrepreneurs and business owners?
Great question. As many of you know, the Secretary of State is responsible for corporate formation and business registration. I think for a lot of folks, when they want to start a business, they know exactly what to do. But for a lot of people, especially in immigrant communities and underserved communities and rural communities, they don't know the difference between an S Corp and a C Corp and a B Corp and LLC and the tax implications of every organization. So our goal is through modernization to reduce the foot traffic at the driver services facilities and turn these into business service centers to do tutoring and learning and make sure there's different languages to help different communities understand these different organizations, to help entrepreneurs in these communities who want to start their business, want to expand their business, but don't understand the filings and the tax implications of their decisions. So that's going to be a priority of ours. I think it's something that's very important. Also using the libraries as a place for people to go to start their business, to learn about starting a business, making sure we use our libraries not just for small business creation, but also for civic literacy, financial literacy, is going to be vital. We play a large educational role, and that's something that I want to really own in on if I'm fortunate enough to get with.
Terrific, thank you. Okay, one last question here before I turn it over to Nazanin. And I'll start with you, Mr. Gianluis. So there are two highly qualified South Asian candidate judges, Rena Van Tyne and Sanjay Taylor, who are running for election in the June 2022 primary. Having met them and knowing their qualifications, the Indo-American Democratic Organization is endorsing them. Will you endorse their candidacy, and will you commit to endorsing them in their respective races? Do you need me to repeat it? Did that come through?
Well, I'm sorry, was that quite, it's very hard to hear the question, I'm sorry.
Sure, no problem. I'll speak louder. So there are two highly qualified South Asian American judges, Rena Van Tyne and Sanjay Taylor. Both of them are running for election in the June 2022 primary. Having met them and knowing their qualifications, the Indo-American Democratic Organization is endorsing them. Will you endorse their candidacy, and will you commit to endorsing them in their respective races?
Well, if I'm assuming I'm first to go, I have this theory that you should never endorse them unless you get a chance to meet them. So for me to blindly promise an endorsement, I think would be unfair. I will tell you, I hold IADO in tremendously high esteem. So if you guys have vetted candidates and you feel good about them, I will tell you I will still meet with someone, but that holds a lot of weight with me personally and politically. So the answer is most likely yes, but I would never blanket endorse them unless I get a chance to look at them in the eye, meet them, and hear from them directly.
Sure. Ms. Valencia?
Yes, I'm not one of the candidates. I've heard her speak at, I think something recently about that. But again, I think it's important that we do have a conversation and get to know what their platforms are. I wouldn't want to endorse someone that would be opposite of something that I believe in. I think that's really important when you put your name to something. But I'm very excited to meet them. And I think, again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about representation is needed at every level of government. And if we don't build a bench now, we never get to what it should be true equity.
Thank you so much. Rena Van Tyne, let me just put out that, that's my sweetheart. So I've supported her last time, I'm supporting her again. Her vision and everything that she's doing is awesome. So she's already using my name out there. I cannot recall, and I do have a good memory. I don't think I met Ms. Taylor. If I did, I apologize for not remembering. So we're meeting with a lot of judges. So I haven't had an opportunity to meet her yet. But if there's an opportunity and that's someone that this community supports, and if it's not in conflict, especially with other judges that I probably have really given endorsement to, is definitely someone I'll look at. But Rena Van Tyne, she's already on point with me.
Alderman Dunn?
Yes, Excuse me. I am no stranger to endorsing candidates from this community. I endorsed Rishi Agrawal from when he ran for judge and was pleased to do that because he was the most qualified candidate. I have sat down with both Sanjay and Rena on a number of occasions. I've talked to them every time I see them out on the campaign trail. I will make a commitment that I will probably endorse as a Democratic committeeman the third ward. One of the two candidates, there will be a lot of people that we're going to consider. And so they're both very qualified candidates, and at this point, I can't tell you which one.
Thank you. With that, we want to start with a lighter question. How do you find balance? What do you do for fun? I'll start with Alderman Moore.
Why did you do that? You know what? Believe it or not, serving is fun for me. And I can go on vacation, and all I'm thinking about is how can I be a blessing to someone. So I have a balance in my life. I like to, play tennis, but in being around our young people, when I'm elevating young people, that's what gives me joy. So anytime I get a way to help other people reach their goals and their dreams, that's the balance in my life. But I just love serving, and I've been serving, like I said, ever since I was 8 years old, starting out in the church. And it's just in my blood and it's in my heart. So that's both my fun and my work. So therefore, my job, I never feel like I'm working a day in my life. So I serve, and I serve well.
That's great, thank you. Alderman Powell.
Oh, finding balance is so hard. But I'm a big fan of the Food Network, so I'm a big fan of Chopped. I watch that a lot. I have a dog that I walk every day, and it's good to get out and see people in my community and talk to them. And as I mentioned, I'm an avid Bulls fan, so you'll find me at every home game as much as possible, and at every home Sky game as much as possible. That's balance for me.
I gave up balance a long time ago. A friend of mine, Connie Lindsay, told me it's work-life integration. Because if you find balance, you're always kind of disappointing yourself. But if you just work and flow and your life flow together, it's easier to do. And I found that. So where I can find a moment to hang with my daughter in between call time or an event is just pure joy. And we took her Halloween trick-or-treating with her cousins. We were superheroes. I was Black Widow. She was Wonder Woman. Rhea was Hulk. So anytime I can spend with friends or family over dinner. I'm also really into my faith. I belong to St. Church Chicago, so every morning I wake up before the baby. I do prayer and meditation, listen to worship music. I don't listen to any news until 8 a.m. because I really want to start my day taking in life and enjoying it. Because why work so hard not to enjoy the life and the joy and blessings around you? So then I start my day, and I really try to end the day in the evening with family. And stop working.
That's awesome. Same question, Mr. Janelius.
I think the question was, what do you do for fun? And I will say that I've got two daughters, 6 and 4, that I am obsessed with, so I try and spend every single second I can with them. That's something that I love doing, and coming from a family of all boys to have 2 girls, it's been very interesting, but I am obsessed with them. Also, as a former professional basketball player, being active is important to me, so I work out. I try to work out 7 days a week if possible. Alderman Moore, I'd love to play some tennis with you sometime, although I think you might get me. But I really believe in being active. I love my family. I love spending time with my wife. We used to enjoy going to the movies before COVID. I love playing poker, although COVID has kind of limited that. But I think having balance and being someone that's fun and interesting is very important, and I love my family more than you could ever imagine.
That's awesome. I'll start with my next question with Ms. Valencius. What initiatives or programs will you put in place to increase voting?
So I talked about the Civics Corps, which is a youth jobs program paid, that we can have our young people be civically engaged, learn how to register voters, learning that they have power now, they don't have to wait until they're older. We did something similar in the city clerk's office. We had a Next Gen City Council where over 400 kids from CPS schools came and participated before COVID, where they were creating their own ordinances and standing up and debating them and meeting other kids from different high schools across the city that they would have never met, the different neighborhoods, and learning different perspectives and how to compromise and how to listen, things that electeds need to learn ourselves. And it was really important to see when they started the program and when they left, and how they stood taller, how they sat taller in the seats, and what that felt to be empowered. And I know what it feels like to be a leader, especially when you're a young person coming from a lower socioeconomic status or being first generation of your family go to college, not to have those opportunities. So I think it's so critical we open those doors for our young people, and that's what I really want to do as this legacy, is bringing young people in with us.
Thank you so much. At the start, when I was speaking earlier, you heard me talk about the youth engagement office. I was the first one in this race to talk about establishing youth engagement offices throughout this state. In honor of Jesse White, I want to call it the Jesse White Youth Engagement Office. And so by doing that, you heard me talk about the opt option. And that's making sure they get that birthday card on that 18th birthday so that our youth are registered to vote. But we're not just talking about our youth here. We're talking about everybody. How can we get everybody to vote? And the way you do that is talk about issues that affect people. What motivates people to vote and get out to vote is finding out those issues that impact them. And that's what gets people out to the polling locations. Most people don't get out unless they are motivated or energized or mobilized to do so. And it's basically based on those issues. If it's a youth issue, we do that. If it's a ethnic issue, we do that. And so when you put those issues out at the forefront, that's when people are coming out to vote. And that's what we'll continue to do by listening to different communities, listening to different people, and making sure that issues get out in the forefront. Thank you.
Secretary White is the most popular vote getter in the state of Illinois. And the reason that he has been that way is for a number of reasons. One, he has provided great service to people in the state. He's always visible and out there talking to people about the issues affecting the Secretary of State's office. He has a fantastic Jesse White Tumblers program, which allows him to engage with young people. And while I won't be the tumbler of the Secretary of State's office, I am interested in working with young people to bring them through sports, basketball, volleyball, to get an opportunity to learn more about the Secretary of State's office, how they can be civically engaged, how they can do service within their own communities to get them more involved in the democratic process. For the adults, I think it's important that, as Alderman Moore said, to address the issues that they care about, to show that you're actually doing the work necessary that will allow them to continue and want to come out, motivate them to come out and continue to vote through the democratic process.
Thank you. Mr. Janelli's same question. What initiative of programs will you do, will you put in place to increase the voting?
So I would begin by agreeing with Alderman Dahl. I think Secretary White has done a great job of being visible. I think that's a big deal, using the bully pulpit of that office to talk about civic engagement, to do everything you can to increase voting. I think, as mentioned earlier, making sure that automatic voter registration is implemented as effectively as humanly possible will be key. Focusing on programs within the office like Motor Voter, making sure those are done as well as possible. And I think a lot of it is getting out there, talking to high schools, going out to college campuses, talking to folks in nursing homes, explaining why voting is so important. Being out there is a very powerful tool. And then, as I mentioned earlier, whether it's focusing on increasing mail-in voting, talking about the future of electronic voting and the technology that exists to help push that forward is something that a lot of folks are starting to talk about. And then lastly, I would say using our libraries to teach civic engagement, to educate people about the importance of voting, where you can vote, how to vote, why it's so important, maybe able to vote. All that's going to be enormously important, but a lot of it comes down to getting out there and educating folks on why it's so important to make sure they know every day, for every election, for every race, because every race is important.
All right, very good. Okay, switching gears a little bit here for Alderwoman McDowell. With 4,000 employees under the Secretary of State's office, would you mandate vaccines considering many of the employees work face-to-face with the general public?
Yes.
Alderman Moore?
Well, let me just go ahead. Yes, because, I mean, I have seen this vaccination up close. I've seen COVID-19 up close. I have seen people that I know and love who have been placed on ventilators. I have seen people affected by super spreaders, where someone has gone to a family dinner and, from that family dinner, 9 people were affected. I have seen people who have passed from COVID-19. The vaccination is a safe vaccination. The science proves it, and it proves that it is effective. And I believe that if you come in contact with the public and your job is paid for by the taxpayers, that you should be vaccinated. And so I do support the vaccination mandate.
Ms. Valencia?
Yes, and as someone who runs an executive office now, I know that there are religious exemptions or medical exemptions, and we did our best to have conversations with everyone in our office who might feel skeptical or thought it was too fast, and try to get them the research and data to show them so they felt comfortable doing it. But again, this is real. We're in a pandemic. And I think as someone on the front line, we're essential workers, and so I want my team to be protected against it and the customers that we serve to be protected against it. So we all have to do our part, and I think as an employee that's important to know. And I think we all saw this, I don't know if anyone followed this debate at City Council last Friday. They debated this on the floor, and I think it also goes to, they talked a lot about collective bargaining agreements, a lot about responsibility, and I think those are the key issues you have to think about as an employer as well. So I think everyone should get their vaccination, trust science as much as possible.
Mr. Jagoulias?
The answer is yes. It's about protecting others. I was vaccinated as soon as I was able. Folks in my family are vaccinated, so I think it's important for everyone to protect others.
Alderman Moore?
I strongly support vaccination. I have pushed and had vaccination drives at my office, and I continue to do that. But I don't believe in the nuclear option. I think people should have to report whether they've been vaccinated or not, and if they don't, they should be tested every single week. And I have friends and family, just a family member who had been vaccinated, who unfortunately, caught COVID while he was vaccinated. And so my thing is to make sure that we protect people. If we have to protect people, if having people get tested every week, then we do that. And then continue to look at the numbers. And so we will encourage people so that they can get vaccinated. I don't think you throw the baby out with the bathwater, because there's families out here and people out here who have families that we have to make sure that we're not throwing them out, but continue encouraging them to get vaccinated. And as we continue to do that, as you see, the numbers are going up, and that's what we're going to continue to do, so those numbers can go up and people can get vaccinated.
Thank you. My next question is, crime seems to be so bad, it makes it very unsafe to be in downtown after sundown. How can we get our city back, Mr. Tenorius?
I believe that the question was on crime, is that correct?
Yes, crime seems to be so bad, it makes it very unsafe to be in downtown after sundown. How can we get our city back?
Great point. We see it, we live it, it's unfortunate. I'm proud to have lived in Chicago, to have grown up in the city, to still live in the city with my family. It's getting really scary out there. I say it's the number one issue that comes up everywhere we go. It even came up this evening at this event that we're at right now. We put out a proposal to discuss, number one, putting together a task force to work with law enforcement, local sheriffs, the Attorney General's office, police department, making sure we're doing everything we can to continue the conversation to figure out solutions. We've also talked about what else can we do within the confines of the Secretary of State's office. If you're convicted of a carjacking, you can't get your license back until you pass a certain course to make sure that we're protecting those who have been carjacked and have been assaulted. So there's a number of things we can do. Obviously, the Secretary of State doesn't have a direct impact, but as a constitutional officer, we do have a seat at the table, and if we don't get this violence under wraps, people are going to leave the city, people will continue to be assaulted and be scared, and that's unacceptable in the greatest city in the world.
Ms. Valencias?
Well, this is a very complex problem with a minute to answer. There's a lot of things. You have to look at root causes. With the disinvestment we've made decades, before I was even born, on a lot of, look at our education system, look how that is broken and disinvested. This pandemic has shown even more safety nets failed, businesses going under, not being able to get lent money to start a business, not giving the capital to grow. There's still racism. There are all these systematic things that are fighting against people being able to get a job, to get a good paying job, a living wage. And so I also think that we cannot ignore that. We cannot certainly arrest our way out of this. That's not the answer. I think that it's going to take a collective of all of us, of police, community, leaders, faith leaders, coming together and also putting real resources for mental health, for mentoring programs, for community centers, for safe spaces. We have to put real dollars and infrastructure down that's never been invested. And until we do that, this is never going to go away. It's a flare-up. We saw the same thing happen after Ferguson, and it's a flare-up again. But we all cannot be pointing fingers. That doesn't solve a thing. So we have to turn down the rhetoric and hear each other and have a conversation about a real plan.
Alderman Moore.
Thank you so much. It starts with the premise of that question, and it talks about downtown. And what you have to do is not forget everywhere else. And whether you're in Chicago or across the state, and that's what people feel across the state, even downstate, whether you're in East St. Louis or whether you're in Quincy, that they've been forgotten. And so as Secretary of State, I want to make sure that people are not forgotten, whether they're downtown or whether they're in Southern Illinois or whether they're on the south side of Chicago. And so as we have to remember those communities, we have to make sure that we have great investment in those, and not small investments, but we have to be real visionary and big about it, because this is a big problem. So we're dealing with situations like even the airport, and looking at a possible third airport in the south suburbs that they're fighting for, not the economic engine that can bring to the south side of Chicago. All of that plays a role in it. And then also making sure that the Secretary of State office, when someone has not paid their child support, or like I said, when someone has been in jail, that we're not putting obstacles in the way that they cannot get an ID so that they can get out there and get a job. So all these factors are critical in making sure that we curb crime.
Thank you. Alderman Brown.
And there's no easy answer to this question. I think the reality is that in order to ameliorate crime, and this is a national issue, it's going to require some very honest and deep and sustained conversations about the racism that runs rampant through this country. And that has to be turned into action on things that people are willing to do in order to bring parity to every community, to every race, to every urban and rural area across the whole entire country. Until we have those kind of conversations, we're going to continue to see the disparity that I see in places when I travel across the state of Illinois, in Alton, Illinois, in East St. Louis, in Rockford, where community is separated by a river. We have to have these hard conversations about racism, and that will lead to changes in investment, changes in our governmental policy, changes in the attitude of the police, changes in the attitude of our children, so that we can all live in a community that is, you know, like the oasis in the desert.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you very much. I wish we had more time for the rest of the questions, but that's actually the end of this meeting. So with that, I will turn it over to Kareem and Shajan.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. My name is Shajan Kriakos. I am the president of the Indo-American Democratic Organization. My apologies for being late, but my wife just delivered her third child, so she was taking care of as well as the kids. So thank you for being here tonight. I did want to thank our partners, Asian Americans for Advancing Justice, Vote Assyrian, Common Cause, the Illinois Muslim Civic Coalition, AMP, as well as the Women's March Chicago and the Young Dems of Illinois. We did make this a nonpartisan event, but since a Republican candidate has yet to declare, you four were the ones that attended today, and I thank you for being here. I also want to thank the board of the Indo-American Democratic Organization, particularly our Vice President, Delar Syed, who led the effort. As Kevin Olico, Akanksha Malachi, Kelly Korean, and I'm going to turn it over to Kareem Lakhani, who is also on the board, who was also a great help. Kareem and his family, who owned the hotel, were very kind to the space for us tonight. Before I turn it over to Kareem, my one ask is for our partner organizations that are still here tonight, or the leaders from the organizations, if you could just stay a minute after I'm done and Kareem is done, to take a picture, we would greatly appreciate that, if you guys don't mind as well.
I just want to add a final thank you first to the candidates. Can we give them a big round of applause, please? To the hotel staff for putting everything together, and for all of you for being here and being a part of the democratic process. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
So if we can ask the IADO board plus our partners to just come up real quick and we take a quick picture. Asher,